say mix
This
it up,
call
but
is
start with
being
me
recorded.
this time, and then
Okay.
next time mix it up. But that was funny.
No
to
problem.
Me.
The gaslight way to do it would be to go, it'd be something like, you go, well, you said that. It's like, did I say that? And then well, if you insist, well, everybody, Julia insists, and oh God,
Okay.
yeah, man.
I'm ready to talk about this movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Just imagine there is music. Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we are back with the 1944 film Gaslight. This movie is kicking off a Gaslight Retrospective. This is the first of several Summer 21 retrospectives I am extremely excited about. This will be right now planned for a 3-film Gaslight retrospective, films along this theme, but starting with the 1944 version, starring Charles Boye and Ingrid Bergman. This is Castle of Horror, episode 335. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castlebridge Media. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew. Hello. And finally, also in Denver, happy Mother's Day to the bringer of color commentary, Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, Gaslight. Man, I can't believe it's taken us this long to watch this movie. Gaslight is a 1944 American psychological thriller film directed by George Cukor and starring Ingrid Bergman, Charles Boye, Joseph Cotten, and an 18-year-old powerhouse, Angela Lansbury, in an Oscar-nominated screen debut. The film
She
was
actually
adapted.
starts out 17 and then turns 18, at which point they allowed her to smoke a cigarette for the movie. Which I thought was great.
Good golly, Miss Angela. This film is adapted from Patrick Hamilton's play Gaslight from 1938, about a woman whose husband slowly manipulates her into believing she is going insane. The 1944 version is a remake of the 1940 British film of the same name, directed by Thorold Dickinson. Cukor's version had a bigger scale, bigger budget, and lent a different feel to the material. Drew has done a little research on this. He can tell us about it. We'll know a little more as we go along in these films. And when it was released in the UK, because they had just had a movie called Gaslight 4 years earlier, they called this one The Murder in Thornton Square. It deviates in many ways from the original stage play. I should say there's also a 2015 remake that goes back to some of the plot of the original, although I haven't seen that one yet. This movie was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Screenplay. It won for Best Actress for Ingrid Bergman and Best Production Design. In 2019, the film was selected by the Library of Congress for the National Film Registry. So this one is a major. This is a heavy hitter of thriller films, or as Drew calls them, thrillers, or just horror movies in a tie. And so that's why we do these things. So because Julia has insisted up and down that we do Gaslight and Gaslight movies, I think we're going to kick it off. Opening thoughts from Julia first, and then the rest of us with our whatever we can follow that with. So Julia, Gaslight, what are your opening thoughts?
Wow. Well, so yes, I mean, I know we've had the conversation in the past about whether suspense thrillers and movies like this are horror, and we've decided that for our purposes, they're good enough to be horror. This movie to me is horror in that I feel terrified watching this film. And it's because there's so much that is true. I mean, I see it I've experienced similar, not quite as intensely, but similar situations in my life where I've been kind of gaslighted. But more than that, I have many clients who have been abused by their spouses, and often it is primarily psychological abuse / gaslighting. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with clients who tell me, well, it's just and they start defending the person's behavior, and it's clear as day gaslighting. So the fact that this term comes from this film that's why I wanted to watch this film for so long, because I'm like, why do we call it that? And it's because this film is an incredible example of what becomes known as psychological abuse, but at the time is just that insidious, like, the man doesn't, anytime she experiences any joy, he messes with her and he makes her think that she's stolen something, she's forgotten, she's misplaced things, she's lying, like constant little things where she's like, I don't think that's right, but the alternative would have to be that he would be just evil, which of course can't be. It can't be that, because I love him. I mean, it's just amazing that that whole thing. And then on top of that, the acting and the visual. Well, as you mentioned, they won Oscars for both of those things. It's so beautiful. It's so well performed. I love this film, but I also really hate it because it made me feel sick to my stomach just watching it. I mean, it's like all these things that just triggered for me. So I'm really, really glad to be talking about it.
That's wonderful. Tony, have you watched this film before?
Yeah, Rain and I watched it a while back, so we actually got to revisit it. It's beautifully shot. I kind of with Julia, like, being a guy, I just see it and go, oh, this person just makes me, I talked about it before, but this is what evil is. Mm-hmm. This isn't this mustache twirling. Like, this is what happens, and this is real life evil. Mm-hmm. Somebody who's so twisted that they're willing to twist other people for their own ends, like this, knowing full well what they're doing, and with no compunction, just sociopath. And just the way he operates just makes me angry. It just reminds me as well, like, so many times I'll be in the living room and I'll be looking at my phone or whatever, and Rain will go, what are you grimacing about? And 9 times out of 10, if I'm grimacing at my phone, I'm looking at Twitter. It's usually what some skeezy dude has some woman who's a friend of mine or a friend on, social media is talking about something some skeezy person has done, and it just, my lips curl back and I'm just grimacing it, just like, oh, can these people just not be this? Yeah. So watching this person just twist things it is done so well. I mean, the fact that the movie gives all these emotions as you watch it. But I think even it's funny too, because Rain said that when she was younger, she didn't really think of it in the same way.
Oh, really?
Like, you watch it and, oh, he's bad. But, knowing how many people this kind of thing affects, as well as, how being an adult and knowing how it all works, right? Like, having friends who have had problems, or being in a workplace where somebody decides, oh, I'm going to shift focus to me or do this way. All of that stuff as an adult becomes even more clear. It's great. The cast is amazing. It's really well done, but also it evokes an emotion, kind of twisty emotion in a similar way that when I see, somebody being pulled toward the wood chip in, what is it, Zombie? When their eye is being pulled, like, it's that, but on the emotional level. Just, oh no. But I mean, that's part of the how great this movie is about that.
That's wonderful. Drew, what are your thoughts?
Well, from giant monsters to human monsters, and the very much the kind that I think a lot of us have encountered, although maybe not quite to the degree of the gentleman in this movie. This is definitely a horror film. I think especially if you are a woman. To think of, like, a very twisted relationship. And of course, the way the setting, the Victoriana setting, and the way it's shot, it very much reminds me of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from the same time period. So I think this is firmly within our realm. So like let's cast any debate of that behind us going forward. This is for all intents and purposes a movie about a human vampire. It's great. This is a great movie. Like, I haven't seen it in a while. I watched it frequently enough when I was younger. But terrific. All of like the three main characters are terrific. The guy playing the husband, and I'm blanking on the actor's name. I'm ashamed of myself right now.
It's Charles Boye.
Boye.
Charles
Yeah.
Boye is so great. Like he's the way he starts out, he's very charismatic and charming and everything. And then when he slowly just like ramps up the evil, you know, through the entire movie, and by the time the movie is over, you just hate him. Is just great. You know, Ingrid Bergman is amazing. You know, this is you know, and yeah, I mean, you know, even seeing, you know, a really young Angela Lansbury is just you know, this is an amazing film, you know. And I'm like you, like, why did it take us so long to get this? But I also love, it is well noted that I love black and white movies, so like I am tickled that we are doing this one.
That's fantastic. So many thoughts that I'll go through real quick, because we're going to wind up going through the whole thing. But I also was put very much in mind of the 1931 Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because that film also includes a lot of what now we would call emotional abuse or gaslighting. Because remember, the stuff that makes you really loathe Jekyll is not when he murders people, but when he tells his mistress, we're going to go out, and then he snatches that away because of some petty punishment that he makes her feel like she's at fault for. It is a theme that is done there and done here, and it makes your skin crawl watching this guy. And I think if you're a human, it also makes you go, am I ever this person? You know, do I ever dangle rewards and then take them away because I'm being petty or I'm being mad? You know, I think part of the best monsters are the ones that we watch and we go, you know, is there any element of me here? Is there any warning, you know, that I can take from this? I think this movie would be unbearable if it didn't turn towards genre a little bit. In other words, it takes its foot off the gas slightly, and this is not a negative. It makes it slightly more bearable that in the end, this guy is being abusive and horrible because he wants to steal some jewels. And it would be, if you think about it, if you took the jewels out, the ones that are causing Charles Boye to do the stuff he does, you know, his obsession with riches, if you took that out and it was just him being an asshole like Chris Christopherson and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, this movie would be almost impossible to watch.
I don't know that makes it better that he's a thief, though. Like, I don't quite see it that way.
Well, no, I'm not saying it makes him more forgivable. No, what I mean is that it somehow, at least the effect it has on me is it makes me remember, oh, right. Don't take this the wrong way. I remember, oh, right, this is a movie and there's a plot going on. And I have now a scrim of separation between me and this monster.
But con men do twisted things like this in real life.
Sure. Right. And I'm saying if this was just a movie about a con man or about an abusive husband, I think it would be even more unbearable. As it is, it's amazing. It's this amazing thriller and mystery that has at its heart this horrible, horrible monster. And he's really amazing.
He would have been a good Dracula. And
that's what Jason kept saying. He kept going, this guy is a vampire. He's a vampire.
Yes.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. And I think that honestly, you know, Universal is talking about doing you know, a Dracula that's in the vein of The Invisible Man they released last year. And I think this would be a good movie. This would be a good, it'd be a great template for it.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, I mean the challenge there is that Dracula plots have always gotten so big that the effort to take a Dracula plot and make it really small and personal like this, you would have to be quite confident, which they were with Invisible Man, and they hit it out of the park, right? But you'd have to be certain that you could do it. By the way, I got to say about Charles Boye, and then in fact let's get started with this. But Charles Boye, two things. One, I grew up with him. The first time I ever heard of Charles Boye was listening to Burns and Allen on a 78 RPM record, and there was this joke about how Gracie Allen had a crush on Charles Boye because he was a big international sex symbol. So that was all I knew about him, was his big international sex symbol that Grace Kelly thought was cute. And then he turns up in Barefoot in the Park, which I watched
Not Grace
many
Kelly.
times. I'm sorry, Gracie Allen.
I was like
Yeah.
suddenly going, wait, who are we talking about? Yes. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
Gracie Allen said that Charles Boye was beautiful, a beautiful man. But he turns up in Barefoot in the Park in 1967 as the really funny upstairs neighbor, and it's such a totally different role. He's hilarious and charming and everything. So
I wanted to say something to a point that just to follow up with something Drew had said earlier. Drew was talking about how Charles Boye starts out as charming, and then you see him kind of become a monster. I also wanted to say that Ingrid Bergman, it's the same evolution for her, and it was really challenging for both of them to do this because they actually filmed out of sequence.
Really?
But and so for them to have this evolution, there was a lot of challenges, and they had different strategies for trying to deal with them. But her evolution from being like sort of a sweet, naive, like everything, it's kind of idealistic, to just the descent into madness and the questioning, like just seeing kind of her eyes, like kind of glaze over, and like she sort of just leaves her body, almost like dissociates. And she actually studied as mentally a woman who had had a mental breakdown. Well, she went to a place where people who had mental breakdowns were, but there was one in particular that she really studied to try to do that, and I thought that was incredible. No wonder she won the Oscar for that.
It's amazing. So the film opens with a murder, and we, Julia, do you want to kick it off? Like how do we find Ingrid Bergman in this story?
Well,
why does she wind up overseas, and how does she get, without spending too much time on it, how does she get mixed up with Charles Boye?
So basically, the murder at Thornton Square, is that what it's called?
Yes.
Murder at Thornton Square. The reason it was named that is because we find that there's been a murder, and it was a famous singer, and she's been killed. Her niece that lived with her is now completely, just gone, lost. I mean, she's distraught. She's a mess. So she leaves and goes to a different country, and eventually meets Charles Boye, who is her piano instructor. Is that what it was?
Yes. Well, he's the piano. He's the accompanist. Accompanist.
No, you don't know that at that point. You just know that he's teaching or working with her. Like, is he accompanying her?
Yes,
Ingrid Bergman?
right there, same room. Yeah. It's their relationship is a secret. She is studying to be a singer, like the famous singer that her aunt was, and the professor has a piano player who is Charles Boye, who comes in and goes. He comes and goes. It's a quick scene where he's in there.
Yeah, the whole point, the surprise part is she says, "Hey, I have something to talk to you about that's serious," and he goes, "Oh, well, I need to, if it's okay, if you're going to be talking, I'm going to leave."
Yeah.
So when we see him down on the ground, down or outside, I guess, I think of it as upstairs, but when we see him, that's why he left. Aha.
Right, because he's the one that she's telling the story about. Right.
This is how big of a grifter this guy is, though.
Yes.
Like he exactly inundated himself in this woman's life.
Yeah, he managed to track her down in a different country and persuade her to fall in love with him, and then to go to England, back to London with him. Oh, if only I could I would really like to be in London. It would be really great to be in the center of London. Well, I do actually have a house there. Oh, really? That's fantastic. Right. And so, yeah.
He's amazing how he's able to insinuate himself and also get one to change one's mind. She's like, "Oh, I'd like to go to Paris," and he's like, "Well, I thought perhaps London," and she's like, and he can just find ways to go, well, to get her to change her mind without it seeming like he was the one who got her to change her mind.
Well, and then this whole business of, I mean, they move so quickly to the abuse. And it's really quite seamless. And it's actually, again, so realistic because, again, one thing that you'll find, it happens especially with immigrant women, but really with many women who are not God, there's so many things I want to say. It's really hard to get my thoughts in order.
Go
But
wherever
what I
you
wanted
want.
to say,
Just
what I wanted to
like
say is
Batman says to Flash,
that
just
he
grab
starts
one.
out, he starts out with the whole thing of immediately, oh, this lady wants to meet us. Okay, yeah, eventually we'll, hi, nice to meet you. My wife doesn't want to see people. Your mistress, as he says to the cook and the maid. And we find out already that he's dismissed a maid, like before, like pretty much quickly as soon as they end up together in London, we move to the point where he's already dismissed a maid. This other maid, he tells everybody that she's kind of not feeling well ever. She's kind of prone to illness. She doesn't really want to see people. They definitely don't want to entertain. They for sure don't want to have any parties. And it's all this shit. And he's like immediately has jumped into this role. And it is such a familiar role to me because, as I'm saying, working with immigrant women, but really just talking with women in general, especially women who don't have careers outside the home, the way that that a spouse, and again, it doesn't have to be a man, it just happens to be a man more than it's a woman, but sometimes it's the woman who takes control of the situation and says, we're not doing this, you're not seeing people, you're not handling the money, I'm handling the money, you don't even need to know, don't worry your pretty head about the money, don't worry your pretty head about talking to people. Aren't I enough for you? Am I not enough for you? I should be enough for you. I mean, why do you even need to see other people? And the jealousy and it's just I just, like I say, it triggered so many things for me about how I've seen people be victimized. And yeah, he's a master at it because he's just like, oh no, she's not feeling well. Oh, well, you're just tired and you forgot. And then he'll orchestrate the things that she supposedly forgot. Like he'll move things and change things and hide them and lose them. And then he's like, oh no, you just are tired. You just forgotten. You're losing your mind. I don't know what's going on with you. And she's just like, I guess that has to be true because why would my husband lie about this? Why would anybody, It's insanity.
And while they're in the middle of all that, some other characters begin to spin around the story. We have, and I don't know how this works in the British version, but in this one, we've got an American, Joseph Cotten, playing Mr. Cameron, who works for Scotland Yard. I presume that, whatever. He's an American immigrant to Great Britain, and he's working for Scotland Yard, and he has taken an interest in the very mysterious, Antons.
He was already interested in the Anne, and she looks just like the Anne. So he
right.
saw her
because he had fallen in love with her.
Yeah, he saw her
in
immediately.
Went,
whoa, she looks exactly like the dead singer.
Yeah. And there's and then you've got basically the maids. You have the kitchen maid, the cook, who is
perfectly nice but deaf.
Right, deaf, and that's important. And then you've got Angela Lansbury, who is a piece of work. I mean, she's
kind of trashy.
Yeah, I mean, can somebody tell me about what I, as a 1944 person in America, like, again, I haven't been to Great Britain, most likely. I'm just a guy in Denver going to the movies in 1944. What am I supposed to make of Angela Lansbury? Am I supposed to go, oh, she's trouble? Is the Cockney accent a clue, or what's?
Well, I mean, the Cockney accent seems to me almost like a little bit taken. She's a much younger woman and therefore a much younger character, which is why she also has a bit of a femme fatale thing going with her. But like the Cockney accent and some of the comedy, like comedy bits with her, kind of makes me feel like they thought, oh, well, Universal movies that are kind of ghoulish tend to have a comedy made at one point.
It's true.
And I know the original has made characters in it as well, but I don't know if it's this exact character or not, because I have not yet seen it, although I plan on doing so. But but it does very much remind me of like a comedy made out of a Universal horror movie.
But she's meant to be a sexual threat. Like,
yes, she is too. Like there's that too as well, no doubt. Like she comes on to the husband a lot. She's flirting with one of the policemen. Like she's definitely supposed to be kind of,
promiscuous.
sexually inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, she carries on, and it's unclear just how much she carries on, but she carries on, dates, flirts with, maybe, who knows, with the various cops on the beat, and in theory, whoever else is wandering into her sphere. And you know, she's an amazing force. I mean, I really, Angela Lansbury is wonderful, and it's so wild to think that in The Manchurian Candidate, she plays the evil mom, and that's just like 20
Or that she'll
years
ever be
after this.
Jessica Fletcher or Mrs. Potts, you know? I
Right,
mean,
all of that. Yeah.
What's even
Yeah.
funnier to me, what I played in my head is Mrs. Thwaite, who we meet, who's on the train and is a busybody,
Yeah.
very interested in the murders, causes our main causes Bergman to be just fraught with anxiety as she's going back, and but there's a point where Nancy is next to her, and I'm like, it's like Jessica Fletcher in the future. Like, it's like her two personas
Yes.
at once.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, she's much less of a busybody, but
Yeah.
it was the way she asked questions and stuff like that just reminded me, like, look, it's the future characters of
Yes.
Yeah.
Angela
Of
Lansbury,
Angela
like
Lansbury.
right there.
Well,
in
yeah,
the-
and when she
in the
sees the
building.
neighbors at the, oh, don't you remember me? Like, we met on the train, remember? Yeah, I
Right,
totally could see
right.
that. That's super funny.
But that's all I could think about when they were together. It was just, hey, look, it's the future at the same time, at the present.
That reminds me, by the way, I really would like to, when I finish binging my way through Route 66, which has taken me a long time, when I get through that entirely, I think it'll be time to do Murder, She Wrote. Because I think it'd be
I don't think
cool.
you can call it binging if it takes you a long time.
I suppose that's true. What do you call it? Just one after the other. I suppose it's just watching my way through.
Marathoning.
Yeah.
Just watching.
Anyway.
Like binging is like at most, I think, a week or two. Like
Yeah.
but usually when I think of what binge watching something, I'm talking about a matter of days.
Right.
The thing of it is, though, in the age of Murder, She Wrote and Route 66, which I'm watching, those seasons are like 32 episodes a season.
Yeah, I mean, if you said, hey, I'm gonna binge Dark Shadows, you're talking
Right.
You're not gonna do that in a weekend.
Oh
Right?
no,
it'd take
even
you
if
like
you
a
watch
year.
12 hours or 16 hours a day.
You'd
or
also
even
start
20.
to go bloody insane. If you can imagine, like, just having that playing all the time. Actually, there were some guys on This American Life, and that was what this boyfriend girlfriend, they just left Dark Shadows playing all the time, and it would, and so it was just
Wow.
sort of.
Did it affect how they talk and stuff?
That's quite a thought
Yeah, of
experiment.
course it would affect how you talk. It would affect every. Yeah, that would be so. Yeah,
You
I
expect
like
every dramatic music whenever you're doing things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you wouldn't. That's the problem with. So even if you binge that by what we think of as binging a whole thing, that's still going to be weeks. So
Right.
I don't know.
Anyway,
My
what was your
definition
point?
of
Angela
kind of
Lansbury was 37 when she played the gaslighting, actually, mother in Manchurian Candidate, and
She's
that's
37?
like just 20 or so years after this movie. 18 years actually, so which is wild. But anyway, okay, so the gaslighting comes in. You mentioned one half of it is all the stuff that Charles Boye does to make Ingrid Bergman not want to leave and not want to trust her own senses. And then and the other big piece, so he's doing that by hiding things, just really awful. Like he gives her something and says, "Oh, but you lose little things," and then
She's like, do I?
he contrives to like make her lose the things, and also to prove that she can't trust herself to go out. You know, in the case of first going to London Tower, and he makes sure that she loses a cameo, and then lose his and then a similar bit that he pulls. It's always things, little pieces to make her feel like she's forgetful whenever they go out, so that she feels less comfortable going out. Because the second one is they go to a performance, a music performance, among the Tony set, around the park, and he accuses her of having stolen her watch, which he then finds
His
in her
watch,
purse. Yeah, his watch. I'm so sorry.
No, that was a thing. So that scene,
Yeah.
he says, she says, I want to go to, no, I'm sorry. We hear the guy, the Scotland Yard guy, who
Yeah.
is
Joseph Cotten.
Joseph Cotten. Joseph Cotten says to a family friend or whatever she is of our main heroine, Ingrid Bergman's character, he says, I would like for her, you're having this party, you've invited them, the Antones. I'd love for Mrs. Antone to sit next to me. She's like, well, the husband wrote a letter saying that they're not coming because she's not feeling well. So you see, cut back to them, and she has dressed up and she's ready to go to this party. And she goes, I know you wrote a note, but I really want to go. This is her first time she's really putting her foot down.
Yeah.
And so then he goes, well, you'll have to go without me, thinking that's going to do something. She's like, okay, fine. He goes, all right, never mind. No, I'll come with you. I'll come with you. So then he ends up going, which actually was kind of a surprise. But of course, she's not going to let her enjoy it because God forbid. So that's what I'm saying is whenever she starts to feel joy, like you see that she's feeling joy, he always does something to screw it up every single time. And so she's enjoying the music. She's fully into the music. And he goes, my watch is missing. And then he just grabs her purse and pulls it out of her purse. And she just starts sobbing hysterically. Yes. And then guess what? Now he gets to go, told you weren't feeling well enough. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have brought her. She really wanted to come, but obviously she wasn't well enough and I shouldn't have brought her. We made a mistake.
Did you guys feel this? I felt that was an almost unbearable scene.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean,
the way that she is just out of control. Yeah.
Because he's also set it up before because, I'm going to surprise you. Oh, we're going to the theater.
Yeah.
And she gets all worked up. Oh, this is great. And then he pulls that rug out from under her before this.
Yeah.
So the fact that she's finally putting her foot down, you're like, oh, well, look, maybe she can snap out of this a little bit. But oh no, he's laid that trap as well. He's just a horrible person. Oh,
he's amazing. Yeah, it's
astonishing. It's just, it gets you if you ever seen.
Yeah.
I've seen the microcosm of it. Of course, not a true villain like this. But I've watched people manipulate and just go, I just had this visceral reaction the whole time.
Yeah, the theater thing was the other time that he goes, that she felt joy, because he goes, oh, well, the reason I don't want you to have those people over, because he had sent away the neighbor and the Scotland Yard guy. He's like, the reason I wanted him to have people over is because I really wanted to surprise you to go to the theater. So then she feels pure joy. And then he pulls this thing about what did you do with that painting? You moved that painting. Like, and it's not, and then, so he's messing with her. Oh, you're saying you didn't move it, so you're accusing the maids? Okay, let's bring them in here. Let's see. Let's have them. Let's accuse them, because now since you've accused the maids of stealing the painting, we need to deal. It's like every single thing.
Oh, and it's set up. He can't just ask the maid. He has to humiliate them by going, "Will you kiss this Bible? Will you, look at what you're making?" And it's always that. This is a classic abuser. Look what you've made me do.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Like look at what I'm doing. Look, see, I was okay, but you're making me do this.
Right.
Look at what you've done, and it's just you want to throttle him so bad.
No.
Have you ever been to a party? I think this is what you were referring to. No particular incident I can think of, but Tony, I've definitely been to parties, dinner parties, what have you, where the husband or the wife will just kind of make these cutting remarks to their partner.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm like.
It's
usually at a party that you see.
Yeah.
I mean, I luckily haven't had a couple's friend that has been as bad as, like a real friend that's been as bad as, and it's certainly not this, but there's shades of that. But usually it's at a party and you look at somebody and you go, I don't know if I know them well enough to step in.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to see if I can do something because this is awful.
Yeah. Well, and usually they're so effective that you can't, you feel powerless because you feel like if you were to say, oh, I think you're treating your wife horribly or your husband horribly, they'll go, what are you talking about? And then you sound foolish because you try to list the things and you sound like an idiot.
This is why this gaslighting is so effective, because it's impossible to put your finger on exactly what the problem is.
Yes.
It's little, like death by a thousand cuts. Yeah.
Except for all of us humans know it when we see it.
Right.
It's challenging too because, not everybody, because sometimes you'll go, what's the deal? Oh, he's a good guy, so it's fine. Yeah. And sometimes that's the problem, is the enablers allow a lot of that. Oh, they have problems sometimes, or she's kind of ditzy, or she has this, she did that. And I'm using, it can be either way, right?
Mm-hmm.
basing it off of my experience,
Right.
especially in context with this movie. I'm not by no means is any one gender, more complicit than the
anybody
rest
can
because
be
of that.
an emotional abuser, and anybody can be
but-
Well, yeah, it doesn't even
absolutely,
have to be like a married relationship. Like
Right.
this sort of thing goes
Absolutely.
on with like siblings. It goes on with parents to kids,
Yeah, in
with
my
kids
case,
to
it was
parents.
a minister.
Yeah.
I mean, I had another really manipulative friend in college, and eventually went. It was even years later that I realized exactly what his MO was and how he did things, and I'm still kind of angry at some things. I just kind of was like, oh, I went along with none of it's like terrible, but just stuff that in retrospect I vowed to watch for and never, But a lot of times, even like I said, the challenge is when you want to step in. They've created this thing that also the person they're abusing is convinced that, well, don't make a big deal out of it because it'll be worse or something, right?
Yes.
And
Sure.
that's
Absolutely.
tough,
And it will, and
especially
they're
if you don't know
right.
the person very well.
They're
Right,
right.
so-
It will be worse. As soon as
Exactly.
you call the person out, they go on the defensive. Now they're worse.
And
Right.
then
And when they get
you don't
home,
want to
it's gonna
see
be
the
double
conversation. Right. When they get home, the conversation is going to be awful.
Right.
Awful. Yeah. And so effectively, I think the best horror does this. You're watching it. Oh, well, you know what? Okay. The best horror can do this. Some horror absolutely doesn't, and it doesn't matter. But you're watching it, and as you're watching it, you go, that makes me think of this. That makes me think of that.
Mhm.
It just strikes me, though, also that sometimes horror is not about anything other than a creeping dread. But
Sure.
this is the other kind where it's all basically symbolic of stuff that in your own life.
And I think that's what's tougher about watching this again, like what Rain said, and me watching as an adult, just watching how media and social media twists the knife in some ways.
Yeah.
That we now have it doesn't have to be a direct abuser of your, it could be stuff people, watch or read or that we read. And then we go, and then you find out later, like, oh, that was totally untrue. Oh, crap.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I have never read something and then found out something's different later, but just how all of that works now.
Well, it doesn't even have to be untrue. It can be twisted so that you see, for example, let's say the thing is that so-and-so was seen fighting with their spouse or whatever. And so then you're like, oh, that person's a jerk. And that kind of feeds a little bit into what we call the cancel culture. Yeah, that person's a jerk. And then it turns out, if you continue to pay attention to the story, it turns out that actually the other person was the primary abuser and they got caught responding. And now maybe that, but everybody else still remembers the victim lashing out or the victim doing whatever. And they think of that person as the abuser and that's the bad guy. And that person's their reputation is tarnished forever. I mean, that is very classic. That's not at all an unusual thing.
And that's the, exactly what you're talking about, where the most, not every film has to be this, but the most evocative films do hold that mirror so that when you're watching it, I mean, that's why this is more effective now to many of us, is we have a different understanding. And so the horror and the dread of it hits differently than when you're watching a villain who's a murderer, who's a thief, right?
Yes.
The villain who's a murderer or thief is evil and bad, like he's bad for those things. But when you see him as the abuser,
3.
right? So when you see him as the abuser and the psychological sociopath, it twists in a different way.
Yeah.
It's actually good.
That's the magic.
It's actually really good that for her that he turns out to be a murderer and a thief, because there's a reason for Scotland Yard to take care of him.
Well, exactly.
If he were just a psychological abuser, she would have ended up in the madhouse. He would have ended up controlling her property. If that's all he wanted was just to take control of her property and send her to the madhouse, then that would have worked, because especially back in the day that this is kind of supposed to take place in, women got sent to madhouses all the time for random totally random reasons that had no, like just being like just
your
being
husband got
emotional
bored
crazy,
with you.
like ridiculous stuff where they're just like, oh no, she's crazy, and then they get locked up, and so that would have happened, and she would have been completely screwed. So it's really actually quite fortunate for her that this Scotland Yard guy was obsessed with the murder of her aunt.
Although
And the
I
jewels.
have a question about whether or not he is legally her husband, because they mention that he has a wife in Italy.
Yeah, boy, that
you're
goes
right.
that
I
comes
didn't
and
think
goes
about
real
that.
quick,
I
doesn't
forgot.
it?
Yeah, and so like if that somehow came to light, he would not be considered definitely would not be considered legally her husband in Victorian England, and
making him
that
a
might be
bigamist
the
even in
undoing
Utah.
of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be, but he really the only reason why that's relevant is just because it's packaged in with everything else.
I don't know if you guys caught that. That was a little Fletch,
Right.
reference.
No, I
It's
got
so
it.
it's so sad. Thank
I
It was
appreciate
good.
it. I love Fletch.
Happy Mother's Day.
Right.
Yeah, thanks.
But no, that is really good. But the only reason we even find out, I think again, since it's packaged with everything else, is the only way that would have come out, probably because of how he acts and how smart he is about keeping this plan together. Because also somehow he's, his wife in Italy doesn't seem to care that he's like hanging out for months in London.
She's probably like the good.
I gotta admit, I don't know why they put that line in there, unless, as Drew is suggesting, what they're trying to do is set up that if you think about it, post Hays Code, he has tricked her. This marriage isn't real. She's free to hook up with Joseph Cotten. It's super
I definitely
fast.
think that's what that definitely is what they want. Is they want you to think, because this is a Hollywood movie.
Yes.
They want you to think that there is some kind of happiness with it, because from what I gather of the British one, and if somebody who has actually seen that can correct me if I'm wrong. The cop is played by a much older man who is definitely not more of a character actor type and not a romantic lead
Certainly
type.
the screenplay is that's the
yeah. And so like he, in the British one, like that is not, he still aids her in getting out from under the thumb of this guy, but it's not, something that's going to turn into a relationship. Whereas this, they definitely want to telegraph it a little bit there, that there is, some sort of happiness for her. And, in a way, just like what you were saying, Jason, in a way that's kind of good, because like you want something. This woman goes through so much. You want her to have some happiness by the end of this movie.
Right. Yeah, and it puts it in a neater package in the way that only Hollywood can. And this is the kind of thing that people complain about Hollywood movies, but I like the strange language of Hollywood movies. I like the way that they tend to wrap things up. And even when sometimes it doesn't make very much sense, when lots of things are forgiven and lots of crimes are forgotten, and lovers find one another, in very unlikely ways. And if everybody's dead, then you just cut to their ghosts meeting in heaven. You're going to get a happy ending if it kills everybody. And that's what they do in Wuthering Heights. You literally cut to heaven just to have the lovers reunited. And lots of people complain about that. I love this because I think it's just hilarious that's how it works. I was just thinking also about the fact that the effectiveness of the gaslighting here, if you've ever watched, and Tony, I know that Rain is like super into this stuff. If you've ever watched like a Lifetime movie, there's like gaslighting in almost every one of them. Like it becomes like everybody's favorite melodramatic situation, because it just never gets old. Somehow it is just so interesting to see. Right. It feels very real. It feels like you're watching it happen. And then, of course, always in those movies, the person figures out a way to get themselves out from under it,
Well, that's why I like this
right.
movie in covering all of these, is because with the abstraction of the Victorian era, I don't feel like I'm watching something that could be happening a few doors down from me.
Oh, good point.
In the same way. And, in an era where, we it's funny we use this term gaslighting, but we're covering the film where it originates, or, or a remake of the film where this...
The trope namer, as it were, is what the TV Tropes calls it. Yeah.
I tend to watch a lot less, I don't watch as many closer to real life movies, to be honest, because I just find it frustrating now. When you know that evil is out there in the news, I would prefer a supernatural horror or some strange otherness as opposed to the real horror that this movie evokes, and it's done really well. But I like the abstraction of just really awesome actors, doing a really good job at this. But with the Victorian veneer of this makes it more palatable for me personally.
Wow, well said.
I didn't actually feel that way. I felt like it was completely. It could have been today. I mean, I just didn't. The fact that it was Victorian didn't distance it at all for me.
I agree, but I was slightly more abstracted, I guess, would be. If it was something, I don't have an interest in watching similar Lifetime movies, especially at present. Let's put it that way.
Well, I understand. This movie is 1,000 times better made than your average Lifetime movie.
I mean,
I don't know. Those movies
absolutely.
No,
this is a great
exactly
film.
what they are, right?
Right.
Yeah, but this is.
This is a great film. But those movies are Tony said it exactly right. Those movies are Lifetime movies. If if you're told to make one, that's what you make. They follow rules just like anything else, and there's better and worse ones, and by the way, one of the funniest things, Will Ferrell. Who did he make one with? Will Ferrell made one a couple of years ago where he and somebody else from SNL just simply made a Lifetime movie from beginning to end with no jokes. It was just let's do a Lifetime movie, and they did, and it was actually pretty great. It was.
Was it Kristen Wiig, or I can't remember?
I believe so, but I would have to look that up. Yes, so we will have it answered by the end. Joseph Cotten. I just want to mention, I really like Joseph Cotten. I've never completely understood what it is that is so magnetic about him, but he is very magnetic. He's very interesting to watch. He has interesting hair. He has an interesting voice. He has a certain kind of wryness about him that says that he is amused by whatever is going on.
I think in some ways it's interesting to watch him because in certain movies he's the all-American here in a way that doesn't necessarily say all-American in the same way other movies are. But his confidence and demeanor are kind of what speaks to his characters often.
Yeah.
It's especially here.
Yeah, that's true.
And he balances, in this movie, he also balances this obsession he's had since he was a kid.
Yeah.
Because as we find out, early on, we see when, the plot starts. Oh, well, you can't have all this stuff around you. Let's put it all upstairs. And it's a way for, for Gregory to sequester.
Well, he's searching. He's searching for her jewels, and so he wants all of her junk, all the actresses, all of her junk in one place.
He can sequester it in a way that is advantageous to him, right?
Yeah.
But as we see one of the main plot points becomes, or kind of the trap becomes this glove that we don't know what happened to it until we find out well at the end that was the glove that was given to Joseph Cotten as a kid. So it's interesting that he's turned this obsession into helping with the case. But even then it's really interesting because they could have gone a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And he becomes a sort of romantic lead, but there's still a kind of a distance he's trying to make.
Yes.
It's thin by the end, right? Or especially once he sees her at the concert that goes horribly awry.
Yeah.
But in general, he keeps it on the level, and I think that was interesting, but not so much that he won't, put a cop in Nancy's reach. So he's like, hey, well, the maid has kind of looser morals. I know that she's known to go out with people around, especially cops. So, hey, how would you like to, walk the speed and help me out? But also there might be some fringe benefits. And
Yeah.
they're coy at first and then they aren't as coy. And I think that's kind of hilarious in a way that this is 44, but there's still adult enough stuff. They kind of walk around it. Oh, I had breakfast at her place. That kind of
it's a good point.
But he knows what's going on. He's like, hey, he doesn't exactly say it, but he's pretty sure if he just shoves a cop, a person, another policeman who he knows in the right place, that he'll get the result he wants. And that's
which, as far as I can tell, is just to get as much inside information as he can.
Exactly.
Out of Angela Lansbury,
which is pretty smart, because later you might. It's interesting to see it in 44 because you might see that in later, not necessarily Columbo, but shows of that nature.
Yeah.
You might have a cop who's, detective who's needs to get some information and comes up with that way of getting the information.
Yes.
Like 70s, 80s era, it would come back to that. And to see this kind of in 44 was also very interesting.
I should mention, by the way, Cotten played, and I just looked up the year. So Cotten plays the bad guy. Spoiler, by the way, and I'm sorry. Flip forward about a minute and a half. Spoiler for 1943's Shadow of a Doubt. Cotten plays the villain in Shadow of a Doubt. It turns out that he's a serial killer. And that's a year before this. I'm amazed. In other words, he was already immortal.
Well, it's cool to see that. Then I guess we're gonna go not in order, but
we're just
to see him turn from he was this person in the year before. Now he's a detective.
Right.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. It really is. We should comment on, well, first of all, the actual thing involving the gaslights. The thing that really gives this movie its name is not just that gaslights are all around in the streets, but rather they have gaslights installed.
And I was actually going to say, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was actually going to say it's fascinating that this movie has been known, that the concept of gaslighting has become that, when in fact that is not one of the things he does. He does not actually. The reason it got its name is because, yes, there are these lamps that are gas lamps, gaslights, and one of the things that makes her think she's going crazy is that the light will go down and up, and she doesn't know who's doing it or why it's happening. It turns out it's not actually a thing he's doing to make her feel like she's going crazy. He happens to be going into the space where her aunt's stuff is to look for the jewels, and whenever he does that, he turns the lamp on, and it makes her light, because all the gas is all coming from the same place, her lights dim. But that's actually not a thing he's doing to mess with her head. That's a thing that just happens to be happening when he's going up there. And I should point out,
in any universe where you deal with bandwidth, this is an instantly recognizable phenomenon.
Yeah, it'd be like, why? Yeah, exactly. Right. And so that, and also the sounds when he's walking around up there, that's another one of the things that makes her feel like she's going crazy, is that she's hearing footsteps. And nobody, and because the one maid is the cook is kind of deaf, she doesn't hear them, and then Angela Lansbury's character is never inclined to help her with anything. So that's another thing, but it's not actually intended. He is not doing that to make her think she's going crazy. He's doing it to look for the jewels, and it just happens to feed into the whole "oh my god, am I going crazy" thing.
Right, but he also doesn't dissuade anybody from going when she says, "I think this is weird."
Yeah, because he doesn't want to point. He doesn't want to call attention to the fact that he's stomping around in this other closed off area.
It wasn't his intent, but he certainly, lets it play into that.
Absolutely,
he takes advantage of it for sure.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
He's quick, by the way. He is really quick to a lot of us stammer and pause if we get stuck, but this guy can just step to the left and to a different lie and to the right. He
Well,
just constantly
and
lies.
everything that anybody else says, he'll go see, and like it's like that, just proving my point exactly.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously it's something that not a lot of people can do. And I was thinking about Bryan Cranston, in Breaking Bad, and then Bryan Cranston in Your Honor. And in Breaking Bad, he has this level of lying skill where he can just sort of think of something on the spot and say it, and anything anybody else, he goes, well, that's what I mean, or there you see it, it proves it, and it always sounds good. And in Your Honor, same actor,
he's a terrible liar.
Less skilled at that, and every lie he tells actually makes the situation worse.
Yeah.
But which was clever, but in this one you're looking at somebody with like X-Men mutant level lying power.
That's also again why this hits home in the way that it does. Is truly sociopathic evil people. That's how it works. That's how they get to where they're at and stay in power or stay in the position that they want to be. And a lot of people go, oh well, this person must be really smart.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, you don't have to be smart to be in these positions. You just have to be cunning.
Yeah.
And cunning doesn't necessarily, it helps, but it doesn't necessarily mean IQ. Like, you
also
don't have to
just
debate Aristotle,
right?
But cunning will make up for the lack of perhaps what we think of IQ points, right?
Well, and also you have to be willing,
or book learning.
You have to be willing
to
step on other people. That's the other thing.
Oh, exactly.
So if you say, like, if you have somebody who comes up with a good idea, if you're willing to take their idea, then that's all it takes. Like, you don't have to be smart about it at all. You can just go, I had this idea, and then the person will go, well, that was my idea. Then they look like, again, the victim looks like the whiny, come on.
I don't remember that. I don't know why you would say that.
It's like, oh, maybe. Oh, I'm sorry if I did. No, it's especially if the person's always doing that, then they're like, oh my God, this person's always trying to take the credit back. And it's like, it's this guy.
And it bugs me too, because somebody will use the argument, well, they're powerful or they're rich or they're this level, above our status. Right.
Yeah.
And the way we delineate status in the U.S., they can't be stupid. Like,
right.
No, they just have to be cunning. Like, and I want to go, how many times have you been at your job and you think of your boss and go, man, my boss is stupid. And he took my idea, like all these things that people, you know, what's on the jukebox of many a country type, take this job and shove it type of mentality. And for some reason, you'll have a powerful person and they'll look up to this power. It would be a CEO, and go, well, they can't be stupid because they're rich. And like, you just want to go, no, that's this person, that's your boss who you complain about, right?
Yes.
Remember when this happened? Like, do you like, and you're like, how do you get to be my boss, right?
Well, again, I think the reason people don't
stuff happens all the time. Like that's what you don't have to be the most brilliant person. You just have to sometimes be a sociopath, but you have to be cunning. And those don't always, in the worst villains, it's both, right? But you don't necessarily need, you need the cunning more than you need the intelligence, I guess.
I think you can also get your victims to go along with you because they are invested, and so if they are to turn on you, then they have to say, oh, I've wasted 8 years following this person or 9 years married to this person, so everybody's invested in this leader or this whoever, so like you're not going to admit to that. So instead, everybody else is lying when they say those things. I just want to getting back to an idea that Drew brought out where he goes, Dracula, do Dracula like this? And it strikes me that has not really been done. I can't think of an example because, in fact, Dracula...
I'm stunned that it hasn't because it's such a...
Yeah, I mean, think of like Palance, right? Dracula is basically a bulldozer. I've never seen a Dracula who lies. Dracula is always like Darth Vader, where he's like, I'm too powerful to bother lying. I tell the truth all the time and it freaks people out.
but
it
would
get them and they're under my spell.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. It would work very well with this idea of Dracula as it's a way you could have a Dracula that's seductive, but still keep him extremely evil because, like, the seduction
that he lies.
Well,
It's
I mean, I
brilliant.
think that in the story and in all of the ones that are derivatives of Lugosi's Dracula, there is that element. Hey, I'm just a count.
Right.
I mean, the whole part that happens at his castle is that for the most part, because
absolutely.
there's no so I think there's been a decent amount, but I think you could push it in the way that you're talking about.
Right.
And
fair.
You could do more of it, but his nature and the way, and again, like multiple stories where he comes into London, I'm this count, like who would, once you've entered in society at that level, no one, it's that confidence game, right? Like if you want to sneak into a concert, look like you're supposed to be backstage, you might get caught, you may not, or your account, like he's got all the trappings, who's gonna tell a Dracula, no, I don't think you're, in addition to just the fact that he can, has a glamour, vampire magic, but in general, once you've faked into that level, there's a certain, exactly what you're talking about. So there's a certain level of society, and that's why our antagonist in this works, right? Once you're in that level of society, it behooves everyone around you to go, oh yes, he belongs here. Yeah. Because if you don't belong there, then they look stupid. Yeah. And are fallible. Like, of course, I mean, I would never be fooled by such a thing.
Right. No, especially after you've, like, I don't know, supported Dracula and voted for Dracula and put Dracula signs on your lawn and
I wasn't even going to go there, but okay.
But yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, that happens. I mean, look at it. We've had, trials and spy trials in that.
Oh,
hey, look,
yes.
It's part of society. What? They can't have fooled me. And then it's not until people really get fooled and have to be on trial that they turn.
That's what the Bernie Madoff whole thing was. It's right. Like, oh, well, surely if all my other friends trust this person, they must be good because my other friends can't be wrong.
Right. Well, and you have to reach that point where there's a reckoning and everybody feels like there's been a real break and now it's time to talk about what somebody actually did. But you're right, that's a profound shift that sometimes happens without you even noticing it, and it happened in the past, and now I'm not going to talk about any politics or any politicians right here. I will talk about the Iraq War. An interesting thing happened where when that thing happened, it was very hard to turn around to get onto a bus and point at everybody and go, who here is against this thing? And to get people to raise their hand. And then 20 years after that, you get on the same bus, you go, who here was against that thing? And they all go, oh yeah, I was against it from the beginning. And I mean, I can't explain it. I think there's fear involved. And I think
there's a lot. It's complicated. And that's what makes this movie is very Hollywood in its portrayal in the way, in fact, that's one of my only critiques is Bergman is great in this character, but there is a level of melodrama to how she reacts to things. I think it's part of the time and it's part of the acting style, but that is one of the only critiques I have, is just bits of it are so overwrought. And I think it's also because you're so invested in how she's sold the character, so her acting is so good that when she does, you want her to be stronger.
Yes.
Because a lot of times when she's questioning things and she reacts and she's kind of flouncing about when she hears the footsteps, you want to go, no, stand up, go outside or do these things. And
absolutely. You're yelling at
the way that it's portrayed. But I think it's frustrating only, I think that's a positive as well, because she has made you so invested in this character and the helplessness that, because also, it's easy to forget that she lived through tragedy after tragedy. So this is somebody she finally cares for. And that's how a lot of these, that's how a lot of these evil people take advantage. They know, they have this radar. They're just able to sniff out broken people. Yeah. And that's what makes them triple evil, right? So you have this person who's really only wants the jewels, but is willing to go so far as to take somebody who's lost everything in their life and has actually potentially money and power back in London, and has decided to not take advantage of that because it's so painful. This person doesn't care. They're willing to take advantage just for like 3 or 4 really large jewels, right?
Isn't that
Because
interesting? Yes.
because that person is broken in a way that just cannot. They have to have that.
Well,
But the way he stares at the crown jewels,
yes,
and that obsession,
which is a wonderful
his level
moment.
of obsession takes precedence over. That's part of his undoing, right?
It's also
his level of obsession takes over the cunning part that is able to try to put her in an insane asylum.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking that's why you feel a certain separation that makes the movie slightly more bearable is you're in the world of, in the end, a thriller involving a bad guy looking for jewels. Because you could also go in the other direction. You could go, let's write a thriller about a woman whose husband is looking for jewels. And you could forget to put the psychological horror in, and it wouldn't be as good, right? But that movie could exist. And, but the movie's memorable because it all becomes metaphorical for somebody who would bother to do all this. And there is not even any jewels to be had. Some people just get off on controlling other people, which
they're just
Christ almighty.
But all of it fits his MO because he's taken somebody who's lost their parents and then their aunt who was beloved, can't even go back to that house because it's so traumatic. And and that's part of the issue too, that makes it so tragic is this is the one person she is able to. She's decided, well, for you. You know what? I'll do all of this. I'll put everything aside, all of this tragedy, and because I love you so much, I'm willing to look past that. And to have that person, the focal point of all of that trust and all of that just love, be so twisted is what makes it even just darker.
Yeah. Julia and Drew, is there anything, before we get to our final thoughts, I know we've jumped around a lot. Is there any actor or any element that we should stop and pay some homage to before we wrap up? Boy, what an amazing movie! But
well, I just want to give a few extra minutes to Angela Lansbury because, like we said, I mean, she's this kid. She had never acted before. She was 17 years old. She was working in a store. She went to quit her job, and the store manager guy was like, "Oh, we'll match whatever you're making, 'cause wherever you're offered the new job." And she's like, and it was like $500 a week versus $27 a week that she had been making. It's like, oh, never mind. So she shows up, and she's 17. She's supposed to smoke a cigarette, and her guardian person is like, "No, you can't smoke a cigarette. You're not 18 yet." So on her birthday, like, they had a birthday party where they let her. They had a party for it, and then they had her smoke for the scene that she had to do. I just think it's hysterical. So all of this, this business of her just being this young ingenue, and here she is. She gets nominated for best supporting actor and goes on to be the Angela Lansbury that we know and love. It's just so cool that this is how all of that starts. I think that's a neat little bit. And also just, I think we just need to give more time to the production design, because really every single shot, because even the sets actually contribute to her madness, because it starts to get more cluttery and more like there's like stuff just kind of it's like the feeling of claustrophobia kind of sets in. And I don't know, I just think it's really a neat, just everything about it is it's just perfect. I mean, I can't imagine anything that can.
I want to call out the
effective.
set of the hotel they stay at when they're on their honeymoon, because they get married instantly and off screen, and then they are on their honeymoon in this beautiful Italian hotel. And the set is like a dream. It is so neat. It's got this huge staircase coming down to, I don't know, some body of water, and it's gorgeous. I wanted a movie to take place there. I just want to call attention to this. Great.
Well, also to Angela Lansbury's credit, her character is Nancy. She does it so well because there's always that element of guesswork on, is she in on it or not, because of the way she interacts with Gregory. And we find out what really is going on by the end, right? Find out, he's been sneaking into another house, and that's why he disappears. He goes up onto the roof, comes in, to his own house, and we catch him eventually. But the whole time of her going, hey, maybe I could hook up with this rich guy.
Yeah.
and her cheekiness throughout it all is really pretty brilliant. Like she plays it really well. This is why we can see that launching point and why she's a beloved actress. Just from the this is her first role, and she really sells it. Also, I think we should mention the final scene where it's so good. Like Bergman's final scene with where he's trying to get out of being tied up. Like we finally found out, what's going on. He's tied up, and her "Am I Mad or Not?" both monologue and scene.
I was really worried that Joseph Cotten's character was going to get killed, and she was actually going to think she was mad after all.
Yeah,
right.
But Drew, what were you saying?
Well, you brought up the sets, and that's another thing that kind of it feels influenced by the Universal horror films that were going on. Like there's this sort of almost, especially the way like it's like the shadows and everything are used in this movie. It feels very like sort of reminiscent of German Impressionism, but also stuff like the Lugosi Dracula and the Bride of Frankenstein and things like that. It's funny, like a film analysis that I watched on this earlier, so that this is a movie that was very influential on the film noir that came after it, and I can see that. But I think this movie, whether intentionally or not, like draws on a lot of horror films that came before it. And like even like that Tower of London set that they're going through, like
and as you mentioned, this is an MGM film. It reminds one a lot of, especially the square of Jekyll and Hyde. My gosh, so much. But also, there's a scene where Charles Boye is yelling at her and tells her to go into a room, and we're watching them argue as their shadows are cast on the hallway that we're looking at, and they're in the bedroom. And I have to say, I was really very worried at this point because in the movies, this is code for rape is about to happen. And then it doesn't. He just turns around and he comes back out. But it's an interesting sleight of hand.
They keep, you're always worried that he's going to turn to physical abuse, and it never really does. I mean, he does kind of grab her and shake her at one point, but that's it. Like, there's never a point where that we see where he either rapes her or punches her or anything like that. But you still are always nervous about that, and like I say, you're always worried. You're nervous that he's going to kill the cop too.
Yeah. But he's in the end, like he poses no threat. Once the cops are onto him, he's the kind of creature that won't sustain being yelled at.
I almost think the film wanted to make sure, or the play, that they didn't diminish the psychological abuse. Like, they didn't want to make it like it's only abuse if physical abuse happens to takes place. I feel like that might have been part of it, because
maybe that's a level of responsibility that is a lot to hope for.
Anyway, and obviously, I mean, they did decide to make him a criminal, so it's not like they said that was enough. But I'm saying, like, maybe they're like, well, the fact that he's a thief and he murdered her aunt and he's psychological abuser is enough. We don't need him to also hit her.
Right. Interesting.
Although the fact that he is a murderer does put the threat of physical danger
for sure, absolutely
there. It just behooves him. He's not Jack the Ripper, like he doesn't kill for kicks. He's killing
strategic
for money. And
I should mention the whole business of the secret entrance to the same building. You go around and around and around and eventually wind up at an entrance into a building you've already been in. We saw that recently reused in The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. And I can't remember if anybody mentioned it. I feel like one of you guys mentioned it as an homage to Gaslight. If not, I'm going to assume that one of you guys mentioned it, because it obviously was.
Go back and insert that.
Yes. you'll hear. I'll give Tony a script, and he'll go, it's interesting. This appears to be an homage to Gaslight.
And then that'll be totally gaslighting anybody who listened to it the first time and went,
Right.
I don't remember this.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my. Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
Can I ask a dumb question?
And then we insert it
Yes.
later.
No, it's always been there. We don't know what you're talking about.
So there's a Turner used to be in the business of experimenting with colorization back in the 80s, right? And this is something I haven't heard about a lot lately. Nobody goes on about colorization. Nobody's doing it. And I don't know if anybody gives a shit anymore. But this is an example of I just can't imagine for all the world wanting to watch a colorized version of this. It is so perfect looking the way it is, and if you were to do a color version, you would just do a remake that was in color. There's just simply no reason to mess with the composition.
Speaking of remakes, has anybody seen the remake? Isn't there a remake like 2019 remake?
Yeah, we saw an ad for it for 2015 it was.
Has anybody seen that?
Nope.
Nope. Which doesn't bode well, but it doesn't mean that much.
This that I have seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you can go backwards and forwards. There is a 2015 version. I don't know if it's like a Spanish made-for-TV film, but I know that there is one. It's shocking to me. They remade Dial M for Murder, so why not remake Gaslight? That doesn't make any sense to me. But
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny too because as we talk about, from time to time, we'll go, "Why is there another Spider-Man reboot so close?" 40 to 44 is not that much time,
right?
So,
well, they tried to bury the British one, like the British one. And this is probably why I've never seen it before. Was considered a lost film for many years, and this was the only version you could see because Hollywood was like, and they didn't call it Gaslight in England. I think they called it I'm probably wrong about
that. It was the Murder on Thornton Square. Yeah.
No, that's the American. That's the second one. So the first one was called Gaslight, and then the only reason any of them even survived is because they accidentally labeled them the name of the production company instead, and so that's why some of them actually. But they did try to get rid of them all. You're right.
And now it's easy enough to just find it on YouTube if you want. But like I just
want to apologize for something else real quick. I did not know this, but I just now searched for it. I should go back and just delete everything I said. There is in fact a colorized version of the 1944 Gaslight. So.
Because of course there is.
Yeah, I thought you were actually just referencing that because I knew there was one, and I thought I actually
I was saying why would you bother?
That? And I'm thinking, I don't really want to watch that either. I thought you actually.
No, I'm sorry. I really thought that there was not, but there is. I mean, look, I love color films, right? My big era is. The late 50s through the late 70s. So I dig color. But
there's also a lot. The first version of Turner colorizing movies, didn't look super great. Yeah. I'm kind of surprised that it looked as good as it did at the time, considering technology, etc.
Yeah.
But, at the time, it was also viewed as, well, this makes it better because now it's in color. You don't have to deal with all that black and white crap.
Yeah.
Like, isn't this better? Look how pretty color is. You have a color TV now. Why would you want to watch black and white when you have a color TV?
Yeah.
Are you, this is the way it should be. When a lot of times, because of the nature of black and white film, and you knew you were going to be filming in black and white, directors of photography would do a lot to make sure that you were getting the most out of it. Not all the time, but most of the time you knew that was part of the medium. So to second guess that and go, isn't it just so much better, more beautiful in color?
You're making a lot of changes. Yeah. You're getting rid of a lot of that high contrast, right? You're getting rid of all that stuff that was to take advantage of but having said that, if I had a student who was like, my brain just doesn't allow me to understand a black and white image. I have a hard time sitting through more than 2 minutes of black and white. To get them to enjoy the work, would I say, okay, here's a color version? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, also in that the early colorized stuff was also in the same way where you'll have a print that isn't so good and they'll Dolby noise reduction, DNR it to
Yeah.
death, so that everybody looks like a plastic doll. And that is bad as well.
Yeah.
Like, well, we don't want the film grain because that looks old, and who wants film grain because now we're in a digital age.
Interesting
Luckily,
point. Yeah.
good releasing companies will keep as much as they can that makes it look decent.
Yeah.
Because also we have better displays, right?
Yeah.
So whereas you might not have noticed some film grain, and it makes less of a difference when you project it, but when you're seeing it on TV, you may pick up on that more. And it also depends on, I have one DVD player where I see it transcodes it a little bit differently, so it's a little noisier and it's more green, and that is annoying, that. But for a lot of people, for people who are in that, no, we got to make it digital, this is better, film grain's terrible, they'll instruct. I think there was if I remember, Predator, one of the first Blu-rays of Predator, just if you look that up, everybody looks like a plastic doll.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And especially, that phenomenon will show up, Tony, where you take a DVD that is an SD image and you watch it on like your 4K TV, and and you have it. What do you call the interlacing, where it'll go ahead and add in
No, that's
pixels.
Totally different though.
But where you'll get your soap opera effect. Where
no, that's
looks
totally different.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think we could, it's not the technical podcast, but you're thinking of similar things, but they all kind of compound, but you can turn on like heavy DNR on, in fact, it's funny because Rain doesn't really pay attention to a lot of that. But then it was on one particular YouTube video of something we were watching because it was only available on YouTube. And it was actually, coincidentally, it was also in black and white. And it was the one movie where she finally goes, "This is awful. Can you just turn that? How did you make this not look like this?"
I would love for you to give like a tutorial of this, like to show it to us how it works, because I would love to.
Yeah, well, you can look up, if you look up Predator Blu-ray DNR.
All right.
I think they fixed it, but that's one case. But it all kind of compounds. But again, that's someone going, "No, crank that up," because nobody who's seen the movie in their right mind is going to want it to look like plastic people.
Interesting.
This is somebody going, well, I don't want that film grain. Maybe the film elements weren't super great. I'm going to make it better. We're in a digital age. And so there's always people trying to fix it like that, right?
How interesting. Well, thank you. That's super interesting.
But the early Turner Classic Movie colorization that became famous, and now it looks much better. I've seen colorized things where I was like, that's not bad. That looks okay. I personally prefer the black and white version because that's how it was intended. But this colorized version looked all right. I've seen some of those. But if you go back to kind of why that was done, a lot of it was that separation of color. Why are we showing black and white on color TVs? The world needs it to be better. And that's, I take umbrage at that.
How interesting.
So, I don't know. I think most film fanatics do, but I don't know. I guess if you want, if the colorized version is what you like, who am I? Maybe not in my house, but I'm gonna defer. If it's your house, I'm gonna defer to the driver gets to pick the tunes. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. To me, it's a very similar. Very, very similar. Maybe a lot of people would consider this more egregious, but it's very similar to the question of, would you be willing to watch a movie dubbed as opposed to with subtitles if you had the dubbed option? And some people are like, yeah, I want the dubbed one so that I can be playing on my phone while the movie plays, and I don't have to read.
That's its own thing though. But I hear you. There are some countries too where things are only dubbed. You go to the theater, you get the dub.
Well, and with a lot of those Italian films that we love, there is no such thing as a non-dubbed version. There was no Italian version. It was always intended for multiple. Yeah.
I love the world that we have, that we get to make these choices. I also like that we don't have to, in a non-VHS world, it doesn't cost you $10 to $20 more to get a subtitle version like it used to in VHS times.
Oh my gosh,
and
absolutely.
Track it down because they were going to make less money on a subtitle version. I'm fine with the new world we live in. Sometimes it makes me disappointed if somebody wants to watch a dub of a movie that I think is superior subtitled. But again, I don't know. I'm not the arbiter of that. there's
life's
so
too
many more
short,
things I would
honestly,
rather
to be
argue
policing,
about, or
you
some
know.
things that are more important. That
Yeah.
But sometimes it does kill my film. The inner film fanatic is sad when somebody goes, "Oh, I can't watch that with words like at the bottom." That bugs me. It's so much better dubbed, and
It's definitely a silly thing to be complaining about. That's for sure. But
also, I have a bunch of friends who are voice actors now. So even with animated stuff that I like, who am I to tell them, like, you know what? I think what you do is crap. Which, of course, they're not crappy, right? The dubs have gotten much better.
Yeah.
For a lot of things. Not everything, but a lot of things are much better. So, it's disingenuous for my voice actor friends to poo-poo their really good work that they do, right?
Yeah.
But I, especially animation, like I think in general, if I can watch it in the language that it was originally filmed in with subtitles, that is my personal preference.
No, absolutely. Okay, we should do our final thoughts. And throw in anything that you feel like we didn't hit on, but Julia, gosh, what a wonderful kickoff to a new retrospective, and I want to thank you for advocating for it. And
yeah, I'm just so glad we finally did it. Like I said, I've never even seen the film before now, so I've been dying to see it. So for me, this has been both a treat and also, as I said, kind of a gut punch, just because it really is. It's just such an awful thing for a person to do to another person, and it happens so often. But very well portrayed in this film. So thank you so much for doing this. And I think we covered everything I wanted to cover. I'm sure there's a million things we didn't cover, but everything I could think of that I wanted to make sure we talked about. The only other thing was just the neat little tidbit or interesting tidbit is that the first scene, like I said, they've filmed them out of order. So the first scene that Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boye did was the passionate kiss at the train station. And she was so kind of traumatized by doing that first that she vowed that never do that again. Like any other love scene she did, it would have to be after she'd gotten to know the person, or at least kiss them in rehearsal or privately or something. But because she was just so weirded out by just going straight into that. So I thought that was an interesting little kind of behind the scenes note. But yeah, just a brilliant film, and I'm looking forward to the next few that we do in this series.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Let's see, Tony, final thoughts.
Yeah, I really like the movie in its traumatic reality of what still happens today. I mean, the reason people say you're gaslighting me, and it's come up so much because a lot of people have stepped up and gone, hey, this is unacceptable. Let's stamp this out where we can, even though it still happens a lot. That real world terror, and the fact that this kind of stuff happens regularly enough that it's pretty terrible. I think it's a thriller, but it's also the horror. That horror is different. The psychological horror of it is still really effective. Fantastic cast. It's really worth your time. And I started talking about it, but I really don't want to spoil any more. That final monologue between our two leads is just so great, and to see the twist in her character, if nothing, it's worth it to get to that. The slow burn parts are their own slow burn thing, but I think that's part of the magic of this movie. But I thought that was really fantastic. And I don't want to say too much more about it, but by the time you get to the end, that scene is just so well done, and you kind of don't know where it's going at first, and it's pretty magic. So I do highly recommend the movie. It's beautifully shot, looks great, amazing cast. Became what we think of as the name of a trope, so which also leads to our retrospective. I think historically it's a pretty spectacular film as well. So well worth your time. Well worth seeing in glorious black and white as well.
Fantastic. Drew, what are your thoughts?
I just happy that we talked about this. I love doing movies from this time period. It's rare actually that we do two in a row, although this is worlds away from Mighty Joe Young. But just beautiful movie, great performances. Unfortunately, still a timely subject matter. But evil people are always going to be there to take advantage, unfortunately, I think. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, you definitely, it's easily obtainable enough that I think you should correct that.
Very good. I think that you guys have said, I literally could not add anything else other than thank you for kicking off a wonderful retrospective. This is a blast. Let's do endorsements. This is whatever you've been watching, paying attention to, that you want the world to just run out and read or pick up or whatever. So same order. Julia, is there anything that you want to bring the world's attention to?
So yeah, we've been watching the hilarious comedy show Girls Five Eva, which is it was executive producer Tina Fey, but it stars Sarah Bareilles and these four women who are recreating a girl band that they had a one-hit wonder with, or they were one-hit wonder with a song that they did like in the 90s, I guess. And now they're back. But the genius of it is that they recast only one of the people in their older version. This is my favorite thing, is that they use the same cast to do the flashbacks, except for one person who is now cast by a woman who's like close to 60 and heavier and shorter than the person that they had in the original. It's just, I don't know. It's just, there's all these little brilliant touches. Very, very funny. Girls Five Eva, because forever is too short. Very, very clever.
It's a really, really good show. Yeah, I concur completely. Tony.
Yeah, I don't really have much this week other than the usual, don't gaslight people and be kind to one another.
Yeah.
I've been watching a ton of movies, but a lot of it's just kind of late night, whatever's you're hanging out watching. So I don't really have this thing. I mean, I'm still playing the same games and just trying to. I'm excited to possibly get back into doing more Deserts of Mars stuff. Actually, I got my second shot, so now it's safer to actually go back to our jam space, and so look for that if you follow the band at all. We're hoping to get back out playing shows that have been deemed safe. And there's a few venues I know that are doing what they can. Maybe some live streams, and then recording. Hopefully by the later in the year, recording the next full length LP is our plan. But other than that, that's about all I've been concentrating on, is just looking forward to slightly more normal circumstances on the music front. But I'll have some stuff next week, hopefully.
Absolutely.
To really push, but this week is kind of a blur, to be honest.
No, but I feel the same way. I mean, I'll get to it in my own endorsements. Drew, what about you?
Well, I want to direct people continually to the crowdfund that I'm doing, which is a crowdfunded comic, which is a crossover between my character, Lucy Chaplin, and Terry Parr's comic book, Aerobicide, which is about a aerobics instructor that is also a ninja. The comic is also a benefit book. Terry got COVID a while back, and he has since recovered, but he has been hit with a lot of medical bills. So we are trying to raise money through the comic to cover those. But if you like the sort of stuff that we talk about on the show, it's definitely a comic that you will enjoy, because it's essentially like kind of a Last Action Hero / Purple Rose of Cairo plot line, but instead of an action movie or a silent movie, our two heroines get sucked into a 80s horror film, particularly an 80s zombie movie. So a lot of interest for people who like the show. So I will be posting the link to our Indiegogo tomorrow on the Facebook group. There's already been several times, I've posted on there several times. Also, a way that I've been promoting, I just did it this Saturday. It was a lot of fun. I'm inviting people to join me in this again next weekend. I did something called what I'm calling Creeping Dread Theater, which I am doing a double feature of 80s horror films back to back, and I'm live tweeting them on Twitter with the hashtag Creeping Dread Theater. Last weekend, I kicked it off. I did Night of the Creeps and Night of the Comet back to back. This coming Saturday, it's looking like I am going to do Return of the Living Dead 1 and 2 back to back. That'll be starting at 11:30 Central Time on Twitter. So please join me for that, because that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing that, and I'm looking forward to digging into more 80s horror, even though it's a million miles away from the movie we just talked about.
No, that's great.
Well, you could loop, if with the comic, you could loop back and watch Waxwork, which is
yes,
people visiting an 80s.
It's true.
Zombie
I
movie.
could do
So
that.
if you want to loop, if you want to keep the cycle going, you could loop back into that, and that would be cool.
Well, I haven't decided what I'm going to do. Waxwork's an excellent suggestion. I haven't decided what I'm going to do for the third set of movies yet, but maybe Waxwork. That's a good idea. Anyway, that is my two. They're not really endorsements, they're more personal promotions, but there you have it. I had a very busy week otherwise.
Well, I mean, this is what I was agreeing with Tony about is, look, there's only so many hours in the week, and the truth is, if we are busy with our work, if we're making art, if we're holding down jobs, I still hold a job as a executive at a cable company, right? And it is almost impossible to both create new work and do the same stuff that you're interested in, and also have something new to talk about, because like a lot of the stuff we do, it's not new from week to week. It's you have like if you're writing a book, it's going to take you months, and that's kind of all you do. So yeah, it is hard to constantly come up with new stuff to talk about. Having said that, Girls 5 Eva, I actually did stream that and loved every minute of it. So I agree with Julia about that one.
Is that the show that looks kind of like it's spoofing the Spice Girls?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
I have seen the trailer for that.
It is really, really funny. And it includes Busy Phillips from Freaks and Geeks, who is so funny, and Sarah Bareilles. I had no idea that Sarah Bareilles was an actress, and she's really, really good. So yeah, that I the only thing I've had time to watch is this, with Julia, and
excuse me. The other person whose name I was trying to come up with is Renee Elise Goldsberry. She's the one. She was in Hamilton on Broadway, and she was in Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. She's just fantastic. And then Paula Pell is hysterical. She's the one that I was saying gets recast as a younger.
Yes.
The younger version gets recast as Paula Pell. Anyway, it's very, very funny.
Yeah, it's well done. We shot through all 6 episodes or whatever it is, just over a couple of days. So, yeah. Other than that, I've been watching Route 66 and just trying to make my way through the 3rd season. So I have a season and a half to go, and these are back in the days when you had 30 episodes a season. So it's a long effort to get through this.
And I did want to give the credit to the writer. It's the creator. It's Meredith Scardino. That's her name.
Yes. Who created the Kimmy Schmidt.
Yeah.
So yeah, fantastic. All right. I agree with Tony. Don't gaslight anybody between now and next week when we are back with another Gaslight movie.
But then after that,
yes,
after that you can.
Then you'll have to think about it very carefully yourself.
Yeah. Or in we were truly evil, it would be we go now on to the Evil Aliens retrospective. We never said that we were going to do a Gaslight retrospective. What are you talking about?
We already did an Evil Aliens episode last week. Why are you surprised that we're doing one again this week?
You're all losing your mind.
We have definitely in the past been guilty of that, where history and screw ups with technology and everything has caused us to just skip certain episodes that we thought we were going to do. And I'm sure that there are people paying close attention.
Or did it happen?
Or did it? Right.
No, we did those, Jason. You just
I think we've been pretty infallible.
You're just so forgetful.
And I think it's horrible that you would think that.
Jason's just forgetful. You know how he's always forgetting things.
Yeah, he is pretty forgetful. We can all agree on that he's forgotten.
Remember when I gave you that brooch, Jason?
Right. The cameo.
I sent it to you. You said you got it in the mail, right?
Oh my God.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Come to the Facebook page. I cannot wait. And I also, by the way, if anybody's still listening, I have made a challenge. I will send a Young Captain Nemo book to anybody who can look at the collage of images that I put up for our Summer 2021 series. I put up a collage of images. If you can name every movie that those pictures come from.
You should limit, though, how many books, like the first how many.
The first, I'm talking about the first person, because nobody yet has been able to do it. First person to write to me and say, I can name all of those. I think it's 6 or 9, I can't remember. But if you can name them, I'll send you a book. And nobody has yet. Maybe because it's too hard. Maybe because nobody cares.
Maybe it's because you've never mentioned it before. And now you're trying to gaslight us into thinking that this has been a thing.
Or he's even more evil, and he emails it to the second person because the first person was wrong. Like, I got them all right, but did you?
Did you really? Yeah.
All right.
You're so forgiving. I think you sent me the wrong one.
All right. Everybody have a wonderful evening. I will talk to you soon. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Night.